All right, hello everybody. Welcome to the WinUI Community Call bonus edition, office hours edition, Q&A edition, whatever you want to call it. We are going to be spending some time answering all of your questions about WinUI 3 Preview 1 today. So thanks to all of you who have posted some questions on the GitHub issue. We're also going to be taking questions from the YouTube live comment section. If you have any questions that you just thought of, you can just drop them there, and we'll get to all the ones that we have time to. So I'm just going to go ahead and get right into it, pass it off to Savoy, who's going to be moderating all of our questions today. So, Savoy, you're up.
Awesome. Thanks for the intro, Anna. And we're excited to jump right into a long Q&A session today. There's plenty of questions already. And Ryan, I will direct this first one to you. Dimitri asks, can we expect more first-party apps from Microsoft based on WinUI 3, be it new apps or updates of existing apps?
Yeah, the simple answer is yes. We're working with a number of different teams internally. We're working with the teams that ship apps in Windows 10. We call those the inbox apps to eventually make a switch over to WinUI 3. We're talking with parts of the Windows shell to use it as well. Office will end up using WinUI 3 via React Native. That's a relationship that spans both the WinUI team, the React Native for Windows and Mac team, and then also Office. We've been working with Terminal and PowerToys, and there are teams in Azure for some cloud apps that we're looking at putting together. So yeah, just tons of interest. And a lot of those apps haven't switched over to WinUI 3 yet in production because WinUI 3 isn't ready for production apps. But they are exploring using WinUI 3 through the alphas and previews that we've released. The latest one is Preview 1 that we just released at Build this year. So you can expect to see more apps coming online as time goes on.
Perfect. Speaking of which, Ryan, where was that question? There we go. Alvin Ashcraft asks, do you plan to update the roadmap soon? Do you know when you will know which features will make it into the Go Live Preview 4 release this fall?
That's a great and timely question. There's kind of two parts to it. I'll answer maybe the second part first. So in terms of knowing what features are going into the Go Live version, there's actually a series of meetings that the WinUI team is having internally, and the first one is today, where we're going to be trying to narrow that down and scope it a little bit. So I would say for the next community call, it might be worthwhile providing a bit of an update on that. We're going to have a better sense of it at the end of this week. The second question, sorry, I've lost it. Say the start of it again.
So it was, do you plan to update the roadmap soon, and do you know what features will make it into the Go Live?
Yeah, so I was just chatting with Miguel yesterday. He brought up the topic of updating our roadmap, so we're going to have somebody go and provide an update there as well. Yes. I'm not sure the time frame on that. It probably won't be long, hopefully days.
Perfect. All right, and so another question from John Trodel. I'll give this one to Miguel, and it asks, what milestone could we expect to be able to create more than one top-level window with WinUI content from Win32?
Sure. If my memory doesn't fail, I think that we have on Spring for SAML means that we are targeting Preview 3 means September to starting to support that. But again, we have this we are going to have conversation today to making sure that which feature specific is going to be there. But so far, it's Preview 3.
Very good. And Miguel, I have another question I'll send your way. John also asks, will there be a sample demonstrating how to combine WinUI with Direct 2D?
Oh, this is a very good question. We don't have in the backup something like that, but why not? So we can just open a GitHub issue and we try just to put in the backlog and see if we can achieve that as well. It's about, I think that they can already use Direct 2D using the swatching panel. But yeah.
All right. And several people in the chat stream are commenting that the video is lagging pretty fiercely. I'm wondering if we should all try turning our video off for a little bit to see if that helps clear up at least the audio stream for everyone listening in.
Yeah, that might be a good idea. Sorry, everybody, as just technical difficulties in this day and age. Yeah, maybe if you turn your video off, it'll make the stream a little smoother. We'll see.
Sure, let's see how that goes.
Okay.
All right, well, let's keep on checking in on these questions. Ryan, I have a question for you. Pinot asks, how does WinUI 3 and .NET 5 fit into or link to cross-device Windows 10 traditional UWP targets?
So WinUI 3 is going to, by the traditional Windows targets, I'm assuming you're referring to UWP targets like Xbox and HoloLens and other targets of that nature. I hope I have that correct. If that's the case, WinUI 3 intends to eventually support all of the devices that UWP has targeted in its history. So that includes things like Surface Hub and all the other aforementioned ones that I mentioned, HoloLens and Xbox. We'll be phasing that in over time. So initially, probably the bulk of our I would say that the very first thing that we're going to focus on is the Windows 10 desktop. It has by far the widest install base, and in terms of number of users that use Windows 10. After that, and the gap there might not be very large, we're going to be taking a look at Windows 10X and then also Xbox. So those will probably be the next main points of focus. We also intend on having ARM64 device support. And I would say, beyond that, there's sort of like then a next set of devices that we might be able to support, things like Surface Hub and HoloLens. But we want to get to the full package so that we support everywhere that the Windows 10 platform runs and where UWP goes.
Awesome. Now, Ryan, another question for you. Great question from Dot Morton, who's asking, would we consider releasing bits and pieces of source code the same way the WPF team did by open sourcing library by library until completed?
Yeah, hi Morton. Nice to chat with you this morning. We have discussed that quite a bit internally about doing bits and pieces. I would say that sort of the time for us making that decision is kind of past. Like we discussed this sort of at the turn of the year. Should we do it bits and pieces or should we do the whole thing? The approach that we've taken is pretty much a whole thing approach, and we've made a lot of progress on it. So I think what you're going to end up seeing is, later on in the summer, not long from now. I mean, it's June now. It's June 2nd. It won't be too much longer, and then we'll be open source and we'll just have it all.
Very good. All right, so I'll give this question to Miguel. Miguel, I'm trying to figure out how to say this name. Kirason, I think, asks, will we be able to develop using Rust and WinUI? Any ideas on timescale and what that might look like within VS or VS Code?
This is a wonderful question. So for 2020, the plans that we have so far is supporting C# and C++ only. However, given we are going to make public and open source WinUI 3, means that you are going to be able just to contribute to WinUI 3, maybe create a project template for Rust. Maybe you can also helping with the XAML code generation is required for Rust as well, because it's required to create the XAML metadata provider and also creating all the X-binding infrastructure, all this stuff. Another thing that the community can help is creating the samples of the documentation, means that even if we don't have planned to do that for 2020, we believe that the community can help a lot with us. So, well, the answer is not for 2020, but if the community wants, we are open to support them in this effort.
Very good. All right. So, Ryan, a quick question here. Shelblastro is asking, when will WinUI Desktop be production ready?
Ryan, I think you're muted. Sorry.
Sorry about that. I have a hardware mute on my headphone. My apologies. At Build this year, thanks for asking that question. At Build this year, I discussed an updated roadmap, and basically what that roadmap has is a set of 4 previews we'll do this year. Preview 4 in November is when we intend on being production ready, and that includes for Win32 apps as well. So that's the target that we're shooting for.
Awesome. Here's a bit of a long question, but it's going to Stephen, and I want to give him a chance to answer some. So Stephen, buckle up. The Windows.ui.xaml namespaces are defined in the WinRT API, and Microsoft.ui.xaml namespaces must be explicitly declared in XAML and code behind to access them. For example, if I use Preview 1 to create a WinUI in UWP app, app.xaml's application and resource dictionary classes are from the Windows namespace, as are page, stack panel, and button in main page.xaml. If WinUI namespaces are to replace Windows.ui namespaces, how are you going to resolve this?
Thanks, Savoy. Yeah, so there's a few parts to that. One thing is that with the Windows SDK, we're moving to a NuGet distribution model. So there will be all the Windows metadata will be stripped out. All the WUX metadata, sorry, will be stripped out. So you shouldn't be having any of these issues. So it would be, I would want to see the repro project to see if there's a bug going on in what version of Visual Studio. But all the default project templates for WinUI 3 should be using the Microsoft namespace by default.
Awesome. And that question was from Terry Cox. So let's take another one here. We'll give this one to Ryan. Ryan, Shahid Malik is asking on GitHub, is there any update on faux acrylic?
Hi, Shahid. I wish I did have an update for you, but I don't at this time, other than just the team is trying to figure out what to do about it. We've kind of been on some downtime after Build because Build is a huge event. I think those conversations will probably start picking up this Thursday and into next week.
Very good. All right, so there's a few more direct 2D questions in here. I'll send those your way, Miguel. Mazib is asking on GitHub, is there any limitation for Win2D in Win32 apps using WinUI? If so, is there any plan to bring it into Win32? Direct2D is available for Win32 apps as far as I know.
This is a very good question. I don't know the answers. Yeah, if it's going to be any kind of limitation, as far as I know, you can use DD2D using the swap chain panel. Means that you can use the swap chain panel to render everything there. But I can't answer with more details because I didn't test in depth yet DD2D with Win32 with WinUI 3 in desktop.
All right. Great. Ryan, a question for you. Alan Arians asks, our company wants to start building WinUI 3 controls for our applications we build. Currently in planning phase, what WinUI 3 preview release should we plan on starting for our development?
That's a great question, and I think I've gotten that question in the past too by other folks, so it's clearly something that people would like to know. When you're building a library of controls, first of all, if you're building anything related to WinUI 3, the first sort of forward compatible or production ready version of WinUI 3 is expected to be Preview 4. That doesn't mean that you can't get started now. If you're just building it for your own internal use for applications at your company, you could start building controls even on Preview 1. You should just know that the thing that you build is not going to be certified for eventual production use. But you could get a head start and you could play around with the preview now. And it would also be a great way to provide some feedback on it so that we can make sure we get bugs fixed if you run into any in the eventual production ready version that we do for Preview 4. But if you want to know when those controls will be built on something that's durable and supported, then Preview 4 is the answer.
Perfect. All right, and we have a question from Michael Hawker, aka the Zamalama. Michael, Kevin is asking, with regard to data grid, the Windows Community Toolkit data grid, has anyone gotten that to display in Win32/WinUI 3 yet?
That's a great question. I'm pretty sure for the build demo that Kevin showed, they were using the data grid. I can't remember 100% sure, but I'm pretty sure my colleague Alex said that was up and running. And I mean, we have a preview package in our 8.0 MyGit package. If you go to the Windows Community Toolkit repo, we have a pinned issue talking about how you can try out the toolkit in the WinUI 3 desktop preview that was released to build. And so please feel free to take that package for a spin. If anything's not working, let us know. Though the eventual plan for data grid, I think in the future, post WinUI 3 is to move it into WinUI. There's another issue on the WinUI GitHub talking about that and asking for feedback. So that's a great thing to give your input on. But yeah, in terms of the current preview for the Windows Community Toolkit, it should be working from as far as I'm aware.
Perfect. All right, Ryan, another question I'll give to you around file picker. In Win32/WinUI 3, will there be an equivalent to UWP or WinForms dialogues that will use file paths, not storage files / storage folders?
Ask that question again, please.
So the Clyde is asking, in WinUI 3/Win32, will we be providing an equivalent to the UWP or WinForm dialog that allows people to pick files via file path and not with storage files or storage folders?
I think you'll just be able to use the common file dialog that you've been able to use. Mike Hilberg, is there anything you want to add to that? I don't think there's any special work that we're going to be doing in WinUI in that area, but I think you can use the same file picking APIs you've been able to do. Are you asking maybe whether there's an updated WinUI version of the common file dialog? I just want to make sure I'm answering the right question.
I think that's what's being asked.
I don't think we have any special plans there at this time that I'm aware of.
I can jump in. So in there. So actually, I use the file picker and the folder picker in my WinUI 3 demo at build. So yes, you can use the UWP file picker, which is also the UWP WinRT APIs to call the system file picker and the system folder picker from the Win32. The only thing that you need there is you need to specify the HWin that hosts the file picker. There is a couple of demos, one in C# and another one in C++ that to demonstrate that, which is in aka.ns/WinUI 3 samples, GitHub WinUI 3 samples, and you can find that. I will make sure that Anna or someone else share this path with you.
For example, in WPF, there's open and save as dialogues that are based on file paths, and we don't have any near-term plans to add dialogues like that to WinUI 3.
All right. Thanks for jumping in on that question, everyone. Ryan, I have a really good question here from Matt Lacey, who's asked, will there be anything relating to WinUI 3 that won't be open source? For reference, there are parts of Xamarin Forms that aren't open source, such as the VS integration.
Yeah, there will be some parts that we don't open source because we have intellectual property that we want to protect as a part of the overall framework that we're releasing. There's going to be a relatively small component that we call the UDK internally, and it's going to be obfuscating a few bits of code. The goal is to not have a whole lot in there, but to open source everything that we can. But there are some things that we want to protect.
Perfect. All right, so this is a question I'll take a stab at real quick, unless anyone else wants to jump in. Mazib asks, is there any plans for an API to generate PDFs? Mazib, there is actually a proposal up on the WinUI repo to do exactly that. If that's interesting to you, I'd recommend checking it out, leaving a comment if there's anything that's missing, but otherwise giving it an upvote and help driving it forward to the top of our list. All right, so another question. Let's take a look at, let's see, this one will go to Stephen. I think, Stephen, you're the best person for this. Brad says, we're switching an application from UWP to WinUI. We found a tree view in UWP that uses subclass tree view nodes, which causes a crash in WinUI. What's the best path forward for this kind of issue that we found?
Please file an issue on our GitHub with your scenario. I know there have been a few issues that I've been trying to help some customers on with tree view, but that's at least the best I can answer is we need to understand your scenario a little bit better so we can help fix it.
Perfect. All right, Ryan, Nico is asking, will the new WinUI improve performance?
That's a good question. And I might ask Mike Hilberg to jump in with any additional things he wants to say. I would say it'll probably have some important performance improvements, and certainly over time that will be true. And there will also be some areas where we are less performant than UWP XAML is today. The improvements will probably come around just more efficient code paths and sort of the general improvements that we've made since our last release of UWP XAML, and those will continue because WinUI will be where our team now puts its investment moving forward. And so we're always, improving performance, you might say, on some level in our framework. There will be some additional memory usage because of the way that we're going to be drawing to a large swap chain now because we're decoupled from the OS. Mike, if you want to jump in and give more details on that, feel free.
Yeah, well, the meta answer is we're spending a lot of time, we're investing a lot of time on perf going forward. Because of the way we're architected now with everything running in the app process instead of the DWM process. There's a extra swap chain, and that's around the 10 megabyte, something around there, of working set overhead difference. The other difference is if you're building for desktop, you're using .NET 5 instead of .NET Native, and there we're still studying it to understand it.
Excellent. All right, Ryan. So we've had a ton of questions just jump in here, asking if we have any update about UWP and .NET 5.
Great question. I know that's probably the #1 question on people's minds, and I'll provide as much detail as I can. So right now, we're still sorting out the whole story between UWP, .NET 5, and Project Reunion. Project Reunion, for those on the call that might not have caught all of the messaging at Build, I hope you did have a chance to do it. Definitely go in and search online, for Project Reunion and go check out the talks that we had at the conference if you're not familiar with that. But the goal there is basically to unify app development on Windows so that these sort of divisions between Win32 and UWP don't exist. We know that the Project Reunion story eventually wants to lead to a path where you can use the latest .NET. So that's already kind of a given for us. We want to make sure that once that reunion story really has a lot of code truth and a lot of product truth, that you can use the latest .NET. That might be .NET 6 maybe next year before that starts to become really, really real. It could be even some product truth later on this year as well for that. And there will be a path forward to reunion for both Win32 and UWP developers. So the answer to any UWP developers here is we are working on figuring out a clear, easy path to get you to participate in the reunion story and also the latest .NET story. What that path exactly looks like is something that we internally are trying to sort out right now. So I know I know a lot of folks want to know, okay, you know, I think the simple way to ask the question is, how do we bring .NET 5 to UWP? Are you going to do it, Microsoft? And the answer is, we're going to try and bring you to the latest .NET, and we're trying to sort out exactly how that's going to work. So we think of it just slightly differently. But there will be an answer for the UWP developer on how to get to the latest .NET. And we're very aware that people are interested in that. So I just want to reassure folks that we are looking at that and trying to figure out the best way to bring you to that place.
Perfect. A quick question from Fons, Ryan. Fons is asking, are there any plans for supporting the Modelview update MVU pattern?
There are no firm plans right now, but that's definitely a topic that we have discussed. We've brought it up in focus groups at the conference. It's something that we're very seriously interested in. I would say that's probably like a 2021, like after we get past preview 4 thing that we're probably going to start to look at much more seriously.
Very good. Ryan, a question about Uno here. Shubs Sluro asks, is Maui the future of Uno? If I port my code to Uno so that it'd be able to target other OSs, would I be able to gradually port to Maui, or will they be completely separate?
They are completely separate things, and they're different technologies. And actually, if you look into Uno, Uno effectively re-implements WinUI on other platforms. That's basically how it works. So it's a different sort of approach than, I would say, the React Native or Maui approaches, where those technologies do more of they're more of like a middleware technology that then graphs over top of all of the different platforms that they target. Whereas Uno brings a lot of the underlying platform with them. So they're just sort of slightly different approaches to doing cross-platform, which also highlights, you know, that the cross-platform space is actually a pretty complicated space, not just in terms of the number of solutions that are out there and the number of languages you can use, but even how the different frameworks and platforms actually go cross-platform. They just have like different ways that they do it. So there isn't any like sort of crosstalk or compatibility between Maui and Uno, and I don't anticipate that there will be, to answer your question.
All right, we have another question for our XAML llama. Michael Alvin Ashcraft is asking, does the Windows Community Toolkit have a public roadmap doc for WinUI 3?
That's a great question, Alvin. We don't have as much of a roadmap now, since it's still a little bit far in our future, but obviously we supported the WinUI 3 preview builds and simultaneously shipped a version of the toolkit. So I think that's a good, clear indicator where we're following the path of WinUI 3. We see that as the future. It helps us as a library developer to have a single targeted version of a control library that we can target and test on, rather than trying to support all the different variations and flavors of every OS that ships. So we're really excited about that path forward with WinUI 3. And so I'm going to paste the tracking issue we have for the toolkit. That's our current kind of landing page of what's needed to make this happen. That also links, again, to the other link I sent out before about our preview bits that you can try today with on desktop apps for WinUI 3. On .NET 5, that scenario is the story that we focused on currently. And so yeah, just give it a try, give us some feedback, and then we'll have more to share probably later this fall once our next release. We have another release of the toolkit we're trying to do between our 7.0 release this fall, and so that's kind of the next thing on our mind, and then figuring out exactly where WinUI 3 is. But as long as WinUI 3 keeps shipping previews, our plan is to update our toolkit preview to align with those and continue exploring that space and pushing those boundaries.
Excellent. Thanks a ton, Michael. Ryan, let's take a moment to talk about how we're budgeting our time on the repo between WinUI 2, WinUI 3, and open source. I just lost that question. Here it is. Matthew said, I created an issue on GitHub about the WinUI controls library, but the issue has not really been updated in a while. Are there plans on getting to these kind of issues?
Oh my gosh, that is such a good question. I'll try not to talk for too long, but just give you an idea of like how the team is sharing its time, because I think people probably want to know. So, you know, broadly speaking, the WinUI team splits its time across WinUI 2 and WinUI 3. That split is about 90%. I'm just guessing here. I don't know if I've actually done the exact percentage. It's probably about 90% of our time is spent on WinUI 3 and maybe about 10% of the time on WinUI 2. And the main reason for that is WinUI 3 is just a really ambitious project, and there's just a lot to do. Getting, working in Win32 was a huge lift, and we've got many more huge lifts that have to happen before we get to Preview 4 later this year. So we spend most of our time there. And a lot of the work that we've been doing has been eating our vegetables. Where it's there's all this delicious dessert that we want to get to, but right now we're just vegetables, all these vegetables, trying to decouple from the OS, trying to get open source so that we can engage even more meaningfully with the community. And I think the whole team, honestly, has just been chomping on vegetables for a long, long time now. And we're starting to see the light at the end of the tunnel to when we can then be open source and really start to meaningfully engage on a lot of new feature work. New feature work is something that I think people on the team are just really hungry to go into. There's all these great ideas that have come out, but it's really hard for us to peel resources off of decoupling from the OS to go and do new features, because we can't really even if we did a bunch of new feature work right now, we wouldn't have a ship vehicle for them. We don't, because we're not done decoupling. So I would say we're probably going to start to get more meaningfully to those issues sort of in the fall, and that will probably continue into Preview 4 and then even post Preview 4. And me personally, I'm both excited and also kind of dreading when we get to that point, because I know we have a huge backlog of all these things that people want to do, and we're going to have to sort out how we organize that backlog and get to it. So I hope that provides a little bit of color to where the team is right now. Everyone is, I think, just trying to finish up, getting open and getting stable and getting decoupled. And then from there, we want to do a thrust getting a lot of these really great ideas that the community has filed.
Great answer, Ryan. I'll throw an easy one your way since you just got a bunch of hard ones. Nico Diamante is asking, is WinUI 3 available for home insiders like me right now?
Yes, WinUI 3 is a UX framework that if you have Visual Studio, you can go and download some project templates, and you can start creating new WinUI 3 apps on any version of Windows 10 that is 1803 and above.
All right. Ryan, a question from Dot Morton. Dot Morton's asking, since the WinUI team also owns WPF, can we expect to see some synergy between the two?
Yeah, you can expect to see some. A good example of that would be in XAML Islands. So, if you've written a WPF app, if you have a WPF app right now that you're working on or you maintain, we'll have XAML Islands that will provide a bridge. And we'll also provide some wrappers for WPF so that we can make that bridging between those two frameworks really easy. There's already a lot of synergy between WinUI and WPF. I mean, the naming and usage of XAML than something like Maui or Xamarin Forbes. There's a fair bit of difference between those flavors of XAML, but between WPF and WinUI, there's quite a lot of similarities. So WinUI should feel pretty familiar. And then also we have folks on our side that are taking and doing a gap analysis between WPF and WinUI, so that when WinUI ships, it's always shipping, you might say, but when we get to Preview 4, when you get to Preview 5, and whatever comes after those things, we want to make sure that the switch from WPF to WinUI doesn't have a lot of gaps, so you don't fall off a cliff when you go to WinUI.
All right. So, Stephen, if you're up to join us, Stephen has volunteered to talk a little bit about the float versus double issue.
Am I muted or am I good?
You're here.
Okay, my Teams is just lagging. So yeah, that's an interesting topic. It's a long story. I'll try and shorten it. The .NET projections, the actual underlying type in WinRT is a float. So the old .NET projections and .NET Native, projected it to a double because generally double is like XAML loves double. And so with the new projection system in for .NET 5 using CS1RT, like just the default we had was float, and we had some customers asking for us to change it to float because they were seeing some weird behavior with it being truncated. So we decided to ultimately just leave it as is because we didn't have to do anything, and we wanted to get your feedback on whether that was the right decision to make or not. So we're still evaluating that, and we're looking into different possibilities and solutions. I think there's an issue on our GitHub, so please go comment on what you think about that.
And just to be clear, I don't think it was called out, but we're talking about the member types and the point, rect, and size structs when you project into when you're using a WinUI 3 desktop app. So you're using .NET 5.
Excellent. All right. So I will give this one to Miguel, who hasn't had a chance to jump in a while. Miguel, Brad is asking, when building in WinUI, should we update our .NET Standard projects to target .NET 5, or does it matter?
Yeah. Let me just thinking about that. So do you update the .NET Standard project files to .NET 5, or it doesn't matter? It doesn't matter. Why are you going? It doesn't matter. So the reason is you need to only to update your .NET project to .NET 5 if you require some functionality that is not in the .NET Standard, but it is in the .NET Standard. You don't require to update to .NET 5, your class library that you are going to consume in your WinUI 3 in desktop apps, which is in C#, which is using .NET 5. I don't know if I've answered the question.
Sure. I'm sure Brad will write back if he has more follow-ups to ask on that. Ryan, here's a question about the previews. Are there known bugs in Preview 1 that will be fixed in Preview 2? Like code that worked in UWP but not in WinUI 3?
I think I might turn that question over to Mike. Mike, do you have like a running list of like big bugs in Preview 1 that we're shooting at for Preview 2 or post Preview 2?
Yeah, so just to be clear, so Preview 1 is what we just shipped. Preview 2, we're targeting for a month-ish, and it's very focused on quality bug fixes. We had a couple of alphas before that only ran in UWP context. With Preview 1, we're running both in UWP context and desktop, and I don't think there's a lot of change in UWP. The big new thing in Preview 1 was supporting desktop, which also brought in .NET 5, and so that's a whole lot of new stuff that we graded. So there's more quality issues there than there are with UWP apps, and so we're spending the next month or so focusing on resolving issues in there. So not a lot of maybe not any new functionality in Preview 2, all bug fixes.
Perfect. Thanks, Mike. And so another question for Miguel. Ryan answered a question about perf earlier, but this one's specific to XAML islands. Alvin is asking, how's the perf of XAML islands, such as WinUI and WinForms, compared to a WPF element host in WinForms?
Well, we didn't compare side to side. That's the thing. So we didn't have any numbers, and we didn't. So the thing is that for perspective, the thing that we really did was about just comparing the perf from the island content in a Win32 versus the UWP app, which already using this a WinUI content. And the perf was very similar, was exactly the same. It means that there wasn't a very cap there. But we didn't make any perf comparison between WPF and WinForms and WinUI.
I think there's a lot of overlap there with what we talked about before. There's an extra swap chain, so there's an extra 8 or 10 megabyte of working set overhead. And then if you're using .NET 5 on both ends, there's some perf investigation that we still need to do there.
Yeah, but we don't have the numbers. Okay.
Right.
Miguel, while we have you here, a while back, Matthew asked, is there a possibility of XAML islands on UWP to use WinUI 3 with Wux?
XAML islands in UWP sorry, say again?
Yeah, the question was, is there a possibility of using XAML islands on UWP to use WinUI 3 with WUX?
So I think that's probably a scenario of a WUX app hosting a MUX island. So system XAML app, just like we have public today, hosting an island of WinUI 3. That's not something that we've spent any time working on yet in either direction. Like both directions could be interesting. WUX hosting MUX or MUX hosting WUX. But that's not something that we plan on spending time on this year trying to implement.
All right. Ryan Said is asking, they just want to know if WinUI 3 has plans to go forward with support for Xamarin.
Hi, Saeed. Yeah, you might think of that maybe in reverse. So Xamarin supports WinUI 2 today, and not WinUI 3 because WinUI 3 isn't production ready. We're chatting with the Xamarin team, but the thing to realize about Xamarin is it's a middleware framework that goes cross-platform in part by targeting the various sort of native platforms of all the other endpoints that you try and reach. And WinUI is the native endpoint, the new native endpoint for Windows. You might think of the old native endpoint for Windows as some of the past technologies we've done, like our common controls, for example, that have been in Windows for like 30 years. WinUI, in some sense, is kind of like a replacement for that. It's a new native technology and platform for Windows that you can use directly, but that other middleware cross-platform libraries like Xamarin or like React Native for Windows and Mac will layer over top of. I hope that makes it clear.
Great. Now, Ryan, earlier you answered the question about faux acrylic. Unfortunately, Martin said that we answered that while we were having a buffer issue, so the response didn't come through clearly. So he's wondering if one more time, if we could take a shot at answering whether there's been any decisions or progress made about how to gracefully handle acrylic / the lack of acrylic before Preview 4.
Yeah, great. I'm happy to answer that again. Unfortunately, the answer is really short. And the answer is because of build, pretty much we haven't made a lot of progress there. But that's not because the issue isn't important. It's really just sort of a scheduling thing. We have a sync that we're doing this upcoming Thursday and then another one next Thursday where we're going to be working with the the compositor team, the visual layer team to start to explore a whole range of issues. And I'll be sure to bring up faux acrylic and put that back on everyone's radar so that we can continue that discussion. But no progress at this time. We're still working on it.
Excellent. So let's see what we should grab here. Ryan, while I've got you here, easy question. Brad is asking, do we know what the differences will be between WinUI 3 Preview 1 and Preview 2 yet? If so, are they listed anywhere?
I like the second part of your question. It makes me think that probably we need to list sort of what the main things are in each preview that they bring. That's probably like good information that we should go and put somewhere on GitHub. But just to answer it here on the call, the main difference between Preview 1 and Preview 2 will just be stability. So we're not planning on adding really almost any new capability and new features in Preview 2. It's really a more stable version of Preview 1. You'll start to see more capabilities and stability and even further stability improvements in Preview 3 and then also in Preview 4. But Preview 2 is really a sort of like an updated Preview 1. You should think of it that way.
Great.
That's a good. I want to echo that point about. I want to echo that point about reporting. Like a lot of the issues that we're fixing are things that have been brought up in as GitHub issues, and so we'll keep those up to date as we're fixing them.
Yeah, thanks to everyone who's filing those issues, playing with Preview 1, and making us aware of the issues. That's what Preview 2 is all about, is trying to get to those.
Awesome. So quick question for Mike here. Mike, Matthew is asking if there's any updates on generic Xbind in the future.
No updates. That's a great issue, great discussion that's going on GitHub. There's an issue on that we've had some discussion about, and that's just the ability of Xbind to be able to bind to generic types, but we haven't made any new progress implementing that. But I think it's a good issue, and I think we've come up with a good plan for it on the GitHub issue.
All right, and I'll give this one to Stephen or Mike, whoever wants to take it. Kevin is asking, are there any plans to enhance tree view and tree nodes, like with tag and or is selected properties?
I do not. I've not heard of any new plans on that. If there were, they would probably be on GitHub already, and I don't think I've seen anything there.
Sure. So what I'm hearing there is if that's something that's important to you, make sure it's filed on GitHub. Go comment and give it some reacts. All right. So Ryan, here's a meaty question. Hans is asking, will there be tooling improvements in Visual Studio relevant to WinUI that we can expect to see in the near future?
I don't know if I would call it near future, Hans, but we do plan on having proper support in WinUI, in Visual Studio for WinUI. And yeah, I don't have a lot more to say other than just we want the tooling experience to be better. Preview 1 didn't have proper IntelliSense support, which is kind of like table stakes. So clearly there's a lot of room for improvement there, and we're going to go and make those improvements.
Awesome. And so surrounding all this talk of Preview 2, Matthew's asking, when should we expect Preview 2?
Preview 2 is 1 month after Preview 1, which would be end of June. Mike, you tell me if I've misspoken there. I think I've got that right.
Month-ish, to emphasize the fact that it's a quality-driven, not time-driven.
Yeah, about a month.
Yep.
All right. Mike, I think this question is for you. Let me know if it isn't. Alvin is asking, will observable collection work in Preview 2?
I assume it will. We haven't investigated it yet, but it's very high on the list.
All right.
In fact, I might even be wrong. There might be somebody investigating right now.
So, Ryan, earlier you answered a question about whether we'll see some first-party apps use WinUI 3. This one's a little different. Jeremy Sinclair is wondering if we'll eventually see some of the built-in apps in Windows be upgraded to WinUI 3, or will those mostly stay in the current format?
The answer is yes. I do expect some of them will begin using WinUI 3. I don't have specific ones yet. We are actually in active explorations with the folks who use those built-in Windows 10 applications, but I do expect some of them to move to WinUI 3. And I would guess that I'll probably have more of an update on that, maybe, I don't know, this is just a total guess, maybe in 2 or 3 months, maybe at something like Ignite, I might be able to say more about which of those built-in, we call them the inbox apps in Windows 10, would use it.
Awesome. Thanks, Ryan. Let me take another peek at this question list here. We have tore through so many of these already.
It's great. I hope folks are enjoying this. I hope everyone's getting a lot out of it. I'm assuming they are.
Anna, that question was answered earlier, but in case it was cut out during some buffering, let's give it another shot. So, Ryan, John Schrodel seems he wasn't able to catch our answer on what milestones could we expect to be able to create more than one top-level window with WinUI content from Win32. Actually, that question was to Miguel. Sorry, Miguel. Would you mind answering this just a second time since buffering messed with our stream earlier?
Yes.
What milestone could we expect to be able to create more than one top-level window with WinUI content from Win32?
I reviewed the schedule like 20 minutes ago to make sure. I believe it's Preview 3. Means it's September.
Very good. So September is the answer to that. All right. So now we have so many questions pouring in. All right. Let's just take this one from Dotmorn. And we're taking it live from the chat stream. Ryan Dotmorn is asking, the release notes don't mention that property change notification doesn't work, but my understanding is that that is known. Is that something that could be added and tracked?
You mean added to the release notes, yeah, it seems like if we have a restriction there that hasn't been covered, we should probably add that. So I can take a note on that.
Yeah, and we've had some confusion about that. In the alphas, it did not work because of the namespace change and the way projection works in .NET Native. In the preview, projection works differently for desktop apps because it's projecting into .NET 5. And so we've done some work to add support for INPC and INCC. We still seem to be having an issue with INCC, which is observable collection, which I think we talked about a minute ago.
All right. So not sure who I should throw this one to. Might just throw it out there and see who feels best suited to answer it. Alvin is asking, will updating from Preview 1 to Preview 2 be easier than going from February's Alpha to Preview 1? I did a file compare of the new CS project and the Alpha update to it. It'd be nice to just update that NuGet.
I can take.
Oh, I can. Oh.
Okay, Steven, go for that.
Yeah, so the reason why the CS projects are so different is just because of the different technologies that are being used. .NET 5 has the nice new SDK style format, whereas, and that's for desktop apps, and UWP apps are still on the legacy project format, and so they're huge and you don't ever want to really look at them. We don't have plans for any of that changing between Preview 1 and Preview 2, so that'll still be the same. If you're writing UWP app, you'll have the UWP project format. If you're writing a desktop app, you'll have the new, nicer looking format.
But just to clarify something, if you are using the Alpha 1 or the Alpha 2, for example, this is a UWP. It's a WinUI UWP. And we didn't change anything for the Preview 1. For the UWP means it should be as simple as just updating the NuGet package. The big change is when you want to switch from the UWP WinUI 3 to desktop WinUI 3. Desktop WinUI 3 is the one who we use in the CPS project system, this SDK type project system.
All right. So let's take this one. ZL Aid asks, why don't any pre-installed apps in Windows 10 use WinUI? And actually, they do. Take a look at the calculator app on GitHub, and that is just the example I know of off the top of my head of our inbox apps leveraging WinUI. So, quick answer to that one. Another that I'll direct towards, I think Ryan might be the best person for this. Martin Anderson is asking, will Windows insiders have the chance to test Windows 10X on hardware, and will it support WinUI 3 at launch?
Ooh, I don't know the answer to the hardware part of that question. But when Windows 10X devices are launched and available for people, our intention is to have WinUI to support those devices. But I'm sorry, I don't know the time frame on the hardware question. If anyone else on here has details on that, let me know. But I'm not sure we have the right folks on here.
Okay, so earlier, Mike and Steven, you guys answered a question about TreeView. And specifically, Kevin wanted to clarify that he's talking about WinUI 2, not WinUI 3. The lack of tag and isSelected requires a lot of workarounds. So I'll turn that into a question and ask, is there an easier way that you know of to work around this issue?
One possible answer is that TreeView has a couple of modes. It can work with TreeView nodes, or it can work with be data bound. And so without understanding all the details of the issue that you're hitting, it might be possible to switch over to the items, the data bound mode instead of the TreeView nodes. Beyond that, posting a GitHub issue might be a great way to dive into more detail.
Excellent. Okay, so right now, I believe we are caught up on all of the questions that have come from this live stream and this GitHub issue, except for the one that Matt Lacey just asked. So if anyone feels that we missed a question or wants a little more detail, feel free to message me here in the chat window. We'll make sure to get into the stream. Otherwise, we have a couple of leftover questions from the last call. We've also only got 5 minutes left here, actually. So I'll focus on making sure that we've tied a bow around all the questions that everyone has here. So I'll say that's just a 5-minute warning here. Ryan, a quick question here from Matt Lacey. Will UWP ever get the SDK style project format?
I'm going to send that over to Miguel and Mike to answer that.
This is a very good question. So, yes and no, we are evaluating that. Means that this is part of the story of .NET 5. As Ryan talked before, so we are trying to come up with a plan where it makes sense to have the great and the latest things. So we don't know yet if, as a consequences of making UWP working with .NET 5, 6, whatever version we believe is the right version, the latest version. As a consequence of that, we are going to migrate to the new SDK style file project. But it's still it's still something that we are working on.
Awesome. Thanks, Miguel. So right now, we are caught up on questions. I'll give everyone just another second to make sure there's no follow-ups they have. Okay. Rian Deek is asking, will and when there be a designer for WinUI in Win32 available to try? Ryan, should I send that to you to springboard off your tooling question from earlier?
Yeah, I as soon as I saw it come through, I enabled my video. I figured I would probably end up answering this one. Hey, we want to have a discussion about that. Our stance right now is that we might not have like a designer in the way that we have had designers in the past for XAML frameworks like WPF or UWP XAML, and instead lean more into the hot reload experience. Basically, we think that the correct thing to do is actually not spend our time on a designer and turn it into an interactive hot reload type editing style and development interaction in our tooling story. So if there's some reason that that's not a good way for us to lead, I'd love to hear about it. I'd be happy to engage on GitHub or on Discord or any place that you'd like. But right now, I'm not sure that we will ever invest in like a static designer in VS. That's not in plan.
All right. So quick few questions came in here last moment. Ryan, Paula was asking, will WinUI ever support 3D models and shader effects like WPF?
Maybe. I would never say no. I think if there's a need for that, well, I'd love to hear more commentary and a GitHub issue on that so that we can have a discussion about it. And I mean, in terms of shader effects, like we do some effects, like even Radial Gradient Brush recently has some interesting graphical effects that we can go and achieve. So I don't know whether we would make a 3D model control or not, but if there's a need for it, we'd be happy to chat about it with you as a community member.
All right. And so Brad is asking, is Home Insiders the same as the Technology Adoption Program? Brad, I am not familiar with Home Insiders, but I believe the Technology Adoption Program is a separate thing. I'd encourage you to reach out to me over Twitter, and I can get you in touch with that. If you don't have Twitter, let me know over GitHub, and I'll make sure you get set up with our TAP program. It's an excellent program to be a part of. So Matt Lacey says that we've missed his VB question. Matt, I searched the chat stream for it. I didn't see it. Let me know if it was on GitHub or somewhere else I should be looking. To make sure we get something in here with the last minute. Ryan, did you have any thoughts to share on Visual Basic?
Yeah, I can. And Miguel, if you want to chime in something too, feel free. Miguel and I were chatting yesterday about Visual Basic. There are just so many places that we can go and put our resources on. Our intention is not to do Visual Basic in like an early wave of WinUI work. We think that we have a full plate. We're trying to do just really evaluated that. We'd like to hear about it from the community. But right now, VB is not on our near-term roadmap. I would say that.
Awesome. All right, so we are at time. Ryan or Anna, I'll give you the mic if you have any last-minute thoughts or top of mind you want to share. But otherwise, I want to thank everyone for joining us for this awesome, super long Q&A. I hope it was valuable for you. I feel like we got through a ton of questions, and I'm excited to see the engagement and all the activity. So with that, I'll leave it to Ryan or Anna.
I'll just quickly chime in here and say I've really enjoyed this. I love getting the questions. It gives us sort of a pulse on what people care about. So thanks very much. And also just, make sure that you're engaging with us on GitHub. Make sure you tune into the UWP community Discord if you get a chance to. That's aka.ms/WinUI/Discord. And one of the things that we, I wouldn't say struggle with, but one of the things that we debate a lot with our monthly community calls is how much content versus how much Q&A.